Yeah, new guys coming to you live. You could bet this like Jerome. New guys are men of steel. Best coverage in the league. Prime Reavers on the field. Don't know, better ask G-Nick, the hype is real. Gurus with the knowledge, you can check the mass appeal. They gon' turn your fantasies into dollar bills, making dynasties from drafts like the Spurs when they build. Want the bragging rights and titles at your work. Let the new guys serve the wisdom to you first. I ain't advertising, just kicking facts. They turn average Joes to Drakes, cause they winning back to backs. So sit back, relax, all ears when they speak, and rain on competition with anything they leak. Make leagues joy gray like Ramsey did Reek. Passing off the mic, I'm out here, peace.
Welcome back, everyone. Week 1 is in the books. I hope your teams led you to fantasy success entering this fine week 2. And I hope you're staying safe with the potential Category 4 hurricane hitting the southeast coast. Nick, hello. How's it going over there?
It's going good.
Staying dry?
Yeah, staying dry. I mean, it still rains here every day. But having football back makes that better because there's something to do now.
Yes.
Yeah.
As long as you don't lose power, you'll be a happy camper.
Yeah. But I hope everyone had a productive week 1 and that all your teams won. And yeah, can't wait to get into week 2.
Yeah, well, before we get into week 2, I figured we'd start off with game recaps, just things we noticed, references, injuries, stuff along those lines. So we should probably just go down the list and start off with Thursday night's game, Atlanta versus Philly.
All right.
The Eagles won that game in not very convincing fashion, to say the least. The only one who really seemed to show up for Atlanta was Julio Jones. What did you take away from this game, from the former Super Bowl champions?
Yeah, I couldn't really tell if it was 2 really good teams playing or 2 really bad teams playing. Not a whole lot happened, kind of a defensive showdown. Unfortunately, Atlanta lost probably their 2 best defensive players, or at least 2 of the top 3 in Deion Jones and Keanu Neal, both, I think, in their 3rd year. So that's a big blow to that defense.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Foles looked okay. Nothing like what we saw in the Super Bowl. That's okay. He's the backup anyway. I think they said he's starting this week, but Carson should be back for week 3 against my Colts. But yeah, Julio Jones surprised me actually. The offense what they were running was interesting. They kind of usually a big part of Julio's game is he's a distraction. That wasn't really the case this week. He was more of a focal point of the offense. They were designing specific plays to get him the ball. They had an end around run to him, and there were pick plays designed just to get him wide open in space. So I like that. I think that'll actually be good for that offense. I think it kind of resembles more of the Kyle Shanahan look they had 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in the long run that'll be better for them.
Well, year 2 in this offense, I think they're more comfortable with it now than they were last year. And I agree, it's beneficial for their offense. I think they really wanted to address all the concerns with Julio not getting in the end zone, which unfortunately he once again didn't get in the end zone. But I feel like Julio owners are fine with the amount of targets he received and all the offense running through him.
Yeah.
One thing to sort of monitor is Devontae Freeman. He left the game late. Tevin Coleman obviously started and played the rest of the game. So if you own Devontae Freeman, just keep that in mind and keep track of his practice reps and if he's going to play. And just to touch on the loss of Keanu Neal and Deion Jones, those are big blows to Atlanta's defense. Atlanta entering the year was one of the more well-rounded, stacked teams. And defensively, they just took a big hit. So that's one thing to keep an eye on. As for Philly, I still don't think we're going to see Alshon Jeffrey this week, right?
Yeah,
I don't miss definitely this week, maybe a little more. And just on the offensive front, I wouldn't be surprised if they start Foles 2 more weeks because they got the win. So, especially if they win again this week, let Foles rest and recover. Take him back, bring him back slow. Yeah. There's no reason not to. He was a former MVP candidate.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I guess we'll move on to Sunday's games, and we should start off with Pittsburgh-Cleveland, the tie.
Yeah. So
Cleveland didn't lose.
Cleveland didn't lose a game. Give credit where credit is due.
It's improvement.
They tied one of the perennial best teams in the league and their rival. So I'll definitely give credit to this new era in Cleveland. I think they looked awesome. I don't think the Steelers did, but James Conner, he probably did a better job than even Le'Veon would do. Yeah, he is my boy. He looked flawless. He looked awesome.
I think I read somewhere that he received the most amount of touches out of any player in the NFL in Week 1.
Oh yeah. I think they wanted to stick a point to Le'Veon there. That probably goes into that. The coaches and the offensive line wanted to show him.
Do you think that goes forward in Week 2 now?
Yeah, I still think, if Le'Veon's not there, I don't know if he'll have the most in the league, but I still think, they're only like a true few workhorse backs in the league, and I think he's one of them right now. I think he's one of the guys. They don't have a better option for a third down running back. They might as well give it to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'd say part of it was also there was terrible weather there, and Ben Roethlisberger did not look great. He really didn't.
Yeah, he didn't. His receivers did, but he didn't.
Yeah. On the Cleveland side of the ball, Jarvis Landry potentially going to get more targets than he did in Miami.
Yeah.
Josh Gordon, they've now listed as a starter. I think that's more of just a formality. It was a matter of time before they did that.
I mean, he made his one catch count. I think it was like a 20-yard touchdown or something.
Mm-hmm. I do want to mention real quickly for players or teams that are in IDP leagues, if you did lose Deion Jones or other defensive players, I found, at least in the ones I'm in, the top defensive player last week was available across the board for me. And that happens to be Defensive Player of the Week, TJ Watt. TJ Watt had 10 tackles, 3.5 sacks, and blocked the field goal in overtime to force the tie. So, do you think this is a trend going forward?
Yeah, I think the stat actually said 4 sacks. I saw that. I thought that was unbelievable. I guess, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree or something, because you look like prime J.J. Watt there. Do I think at 4 sacks we'll keep up per game? Probably not. But
Probably not.
Yeah, but no, I mean,
it's an impressive performance.
Yeah,
missed a lot of time last year.
But when he was he did miss time, but he showed when he was healthy last year even that he could be one of the best outside linebackers in the game. So I think he'll continue to be a staple for that defense. I think Ryan Shazier was always the staple for that team, and now that he's not there, I think TJ Watt might take that leadership role for them. So I think it should continue.
Fair enough. All right, the next game on the docket, I'm going to leave this entirely up to you. It's the Bengals against your Colts, and unfortunately, the Colts suffered a loss, so take the reins. What did you like? What did you hate?
I was expecting a win. I wasn't too upset. It was week 1. You don't want to overreact. Andrew Luck looked awesome. He threw an interception on his first throw, which was an awful mistake, just a dumb play. But he had completed 40 passes. He's never done that in his career. He had 320 yards, 2 touchdowns. So I think he looked awesome. I think the offense as a whole looked good, and that was without their starting left tackle. And still, on 55 dropbacks that Luck had, he only got hit, I think, 8 times or something. Without your left tackle, that's a pretty impressive stat. Quentin Nelson looked awesome. He was bullying Geno Atkins for half the game, and that's one of the best DTs in the game. I was pretty encouraged by it. I like the offense with Frank Reich. He kind of had more trick plays and picks and stuff. It wasn't the same old vanilla one that we used to run, where it would just be, all right, Luck drops back and who can get open? I'll just chuck it as far as he can. So I'm excited for week 2. We play the Redskins. I think that could be a win. But it wasn't that much an overreaction for me for week 1.
Let me ask you, because Eric Ebron had a big touchdown there, do you still think it's Jack Doyle's show at tight end, or you think it's going to be game flow dependent?
Um,
Open?
Jack's still the starter just because Ebron's sort of the mismatch. Jack Doyle had 80%. He was on the field 80% of the offensive plays, and then Eric Ebron was on him for 35%. And I think Jack still had 9 or 10 catches. He did have a fumble at the end, which was awful, but I still think Jack's the reliable option, especially in PPR because he gets a lot of those short catches.
Fair enough. And what about Ryan Grant? Do you think he's going to have relevance going forward? Because everyone was questioning whether or not after T.Y., the tight ends, anyone else would emerge. And he had, I believe, 8 catches.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he had 8 catches. He was a pretty. I think he had more catches than Ty actually. I think Ty had more targets, but that's besides the point. He's a consistent guy. 3rd and 5, throw it to him or something. I think he lacks the big play ability that Ty has and other guys on that team. So I don't know how reliable he'd be in fantasy. Maybe PPR if you had to start a flex, you go with him because I could still see him having 5+ catches most games.
On the Bengals side, AJ Green just did AJ Green things. I do want to touch on Joe Mixon. He looked great.
Yeah, he looked awesome.
There was a lot about him entering the year. He ran for just under 100 yards, and he had 5 catches for 54 yards. He looked like the real deal. How do you feel about Joe Mixon going forward? And do you think Bernard's going to have any relevance, or do you think it's Mixon's backfield now?
Yeah, I think Joe Mixon looked awesome. I think it's his backfield. I don't know how much Gio Bernard will factor into it. Yeah, what a way to boost your confidence, though. Go against the Colts D in Week 1. That'll really do it. But he looked good in the passing game, the running game. I think it should continue going forward. I know they play the Ravens next week, so I'm not sure how that'll go against that.
Yeah, short week, too. They play on Thursday, tomorrow night.
Yeah, so I would definitely keep starting him. I think his success will continue.
Okay. All right, on to 2 teams with trickier backfields. Tennessee at Miami, and this game had 2 massive rain and lightning delays. Miami ultimately ended up winning 27-20, and I feel like it was really hard to take anything away because of the breaks in the action. Kenny Stills went for over 100 yards. Dion Lewis looked like the better running back than Derrick Henry. And Frank Gore did what we all expected, acted as a thorn in Kenyon Drake's side.
Yeah.
So, is there any one back out of the 2 in Tennessee you prefer? And did you take anything away from this game?
I'll still take Derrick Henry, just because I think he's the better back. Well, I know he's the better back. But yeah, Dion Lewis looked better. I think Henry might have got injured at some point in the game. That might have factored into it.
As did Mariota, but he should play this week. He was practicing and throwing today.
Yeah, so I'm not ready to decide on a Titans running back yet. Yeah. But I think the Titans looked awful, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not only did they look awful, they lost arguably their most consistent offensive weapon in tight end Delaney Walker for the year.
Yeah, so that's definitely
He
not great.
suffered ligament damage in his leg and a dislocated ankle and will miss all of 2018. So if you had Delaney Walker, hopefully before waivers this week, you were able to get someone like Jared Cook if he was available, maybe Eric Ebron if you have faith in him, George Kittle. There were a couple decent back-end tight ends who looked pretty good. Maybe someone overreacted and dropped Trey Burton. They saw his 1 catch and dropped him this week.
Yeah.
He had 6 targets, so you could put in a claim for him. There's Titans out there to get if you had Delaney Walker, but it is a big blow to Tennessee. So, after that, San Fran against my father's Minnesota Vikings, and the Vikings won 24-16 at home. Garoppolo threw 3 picks. Marquise Goodwin left the game, came back, left again. And Dalvin Cook performed pretty well.
Yeah, he made his snaps count. He had a fumble which wasn't great. But I think he looks consistent. I think he should only get more carries to follow.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm excited for him actually.
Kyle Rudolph had a touchdown. I believe that was his only catch. If you have him, I wouldn't panic. He's been consistent and healthy the past 2 years. I just think Minnesota's so loaded with offensive weapons that he's going to have some down weeks. Kind of like Kansas City. Travis Kelce had a rough week. But if you have Kyle Rudolph, I'd continue deploying him going forward. He's usually one of the better tight ends.
Yeah.
What did you take away from the running game in San Fran?
Yeah, I guess they're going with the committee approach. I thought definitely, I know you did too, because you picked him up, that Alfred Morris was going to be the guy
Mm-hmm.
for them. But I think he had 13 rushes and Matt Breida had 12, so it was pretty much 50-50 there.
Mm-hmm.
And neither of them really stood out. I think Breida was actually better on his points per touch or yards per
Mhm.
touch. But yeah, at this point, I don't see either of them should be starting for your fantasy team. No one really
Yeah.
gave me that
I
impression.
think Breida got more run because they were behind in this game, and Alf is not a pass catcher, and he also did have the fumble. So I think that's why they ended up going with Breida more in this game. I think in games where they're competitive, Alfred Morris will touch the ball more, especially if they're up and they're just running out the clock. But I agree, unless you're in maybe a 14-team league or you had McKinnon and Bell and just have a need, other than teams that got crippled by running back, I'm sure you have better, more consistent options on a week-by-week basis. Houston at New England, and this was one of your big games entering the week. The Patriots won 27-20,
Yeah,
and I'll let you dive into it.
yeah, not the shootout that I predicted. Still, I guess average scoring.
Mhm.
But I think Deshaun Watson didn't really flash too much. I think he might have had the worst week of the three quarterbacks in that class. Maybe him and Trubisky were around the same, but he definitely didn't do what Mahomes did. And it wasn't a great Patriots defense, so I was pretty shocked. I'll be intrigued to watch him going into next week. Lamar Miller had a pretty good game though. That
Mhm.
surprised me. On the New England side, Chris Hogan didn't do what I predicted he would do. I thought he was going to start blowing up. I think he had one catch, and it was nothing. It was for only a couple yards or something.
Yeah, the offense ran through Gronk predominantly.
Yeah, Gronk looked awesome, though. Jeremy Hill tore his ACL for the Patriots. He's out for the season.
Mhm.
I know they were going to give him a bigger role on that team. But, yeah, so that's basically it for that game.
Mhm. On the Houston side, I don't want to say that I wasn't surprised, but I found it a little alarming because, as I mentioned last week, I thought Will Fuller's success was kind of fluky. He ended up not playing in this game. And then everyone was all hyped on Deshaun Watson entering the year because of what he did last year. People don't seem to realize he has now torn 2 ACLs. Those are serious injuries.
Yeah.
So maybe mentally he just wasn't prepared for the big stage against Tom Brady, the GOAT. I think it's Rodgers, but the GOAT.
Yeah.
And you know, I think he'll play better going forward. But week one, I personally didn't expect that much. On the Patriots side, I think Hogan will be utilized more going forward, especially during the next couple weeks while Edelman's still out. And I just want to mention, because you mentioned Jeremy Hill being out for the year, one thing worth monitoring, and I believe it came out today, Rex Burkhead is now in concussion protocol. So if you're a James White owner, keep an eye on that. And if he ends up not being active for week 2, I would absolutely start James White next week. Just because the Patriots committee is getting crippled by the week. And even though Burkhead will almost certainly be back by week 3, take advantage of the situation if you have James White this week going forward.
Yeah.
monitor Burkhead's status because he was a late addition and concussions are sneaky. Davante Adams came back the very next week after one of the biggest hits of the season last year, and then other players missed 2 or 3 weeks. So it's just something that's unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
Tampa played New Orleans in the Dome and upset Drew Brees. The Saints' defense looked awful. I thought they were going to be a solid defense going forward, and Fitzmagic hit some very, very big plays.
Man, oh man, dude.
Deshaun Jackson, Mike Evans. So, where do you stand on the Saints' defense going forward? And are they still Super Bowl contenders? I don't want to overreact after week 1, but they looked atrocious.
Yeah, I'm going to overreact after week 1, dude. 48 points to Ryan Fitzpatrick? Are you kidding me? Not to mention I picked the Saints in my suicide pool, so there's definitely some bias here. But you got to be kidding me. These guys are talking about going to the Super Bowl for this season, give Drew Brees and Sean Payton a ride out. Not letting up 50 points to Ryan Fitzpatrick and Deshaun Jackson, that's not how you're going to do it. That doesn't work against Tom Brady.
No.
So if I was a Saints fan, shout out Danny, shout out Uncle Len, I would be very, very worried about that team.
They should be worried. They should be heated. Hopefully, that's what your coach is in place for. Hopefully they'll make adjustments on the defensive end and fix that. But if Fitzpatrick can light you up like that, if Tampa's offense realized something, it's not a good sign for the Saints when they verse stiffer competition.
Yeah.
And that's a big loss in week 1. That's a divisional loss in week 1.
Mm-hmm. I don't know the Saints.
Want to mention to Deshaun Jackson, I think he banged up his shoulder, and he's also in the concussion protocol. So if you're looking for receiver help and he ends up not playing, Godwin might be someone to consider. But I don't think it's that serious. I think he's going to end up playing. And on the defensive end, I doubt many people are starting Tampa's defense. But cornerback Vernon Hargreaves has a shoulder injury. Initially ruled out for the year, currently getting a second opinion. I think for fantasy purposes, that one's a little less relevant because Tampa's not exactly the soundest defenses. But yeah, if you own Saints offensive players, this could actually be beneficial going forward because they may end up getting stuck in a lot more shootouts than we initially thought.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure who the Saints play next week. Do you know?
Next week, and I have the schedule up for later. Just let me find the game. The Saints are at home against Cleveland.
At Cleveland?
This coming up.
I'm starting Landry. I'm starting Gordon. I'm starting whoever I could find on that Browns team that'll contribute.
I'm just saying because they gave up a lot of deep plays, I think Gordon potentially, even in PPR, could outperform Landry this week. And that's saying something based on Landry's usage and target share last week.
Mm-hmm,
deep threats, Njoku could have a big game.
Njoku, yeah.
So we'll see. We'll get into that a little later, but we'll see how the Saints, I guess, revisit their defensive situation this week. The next game, my Giants lost.
This was a killer.
The Giants lost. We had it. We were in it. I was talking smack to so many people down in Jacksonville, my friends and coworkers and colleagues from last year. And fourth down, Jacksonville's forced to punt. 55 seconds on the clock. And we fumble the punt.
Yeah.
And Jacksonville recovers the ball. And we lost.
Yeah.
It was a rough loss, but I would like to point out we could have won that game. We just hung with Jacksonville, who, unlike the Saints, I think are potential Super Bowl contenders.
I don't find.
The Saints still might be. We'll see how they rebound. But we hung. Saquon Barkley ran for over 100 yards. Jacksonville did lose Leonard Fournette for about half this game. He'll be fine going forward. Beckham had 11 receptions. 111 yards. I feel like someone should make a wish. 11 for 111.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was actually encouraged despite the loss because we were not expected to win this game. Jacksonville was favored on the road, so we could have won. But I'm encouraged as a Giants fan going forward, and I think we have a much easier matchup this week against Dallas. So, what relevance do you think TJ Yeldon has going forward and for this week alone specifically?
I think it depends on if Fournette plays, and if he does, how limited he'll be. I think he did look good last week. So, but I think you'll definitely have to monitor the Fournette situation, and that'll determine it. I don't think he's as much of a workhorse backup as like a James Conner or something. I don't think he could take on a full workload. I think he just makes more of his money in the passing game. So I'm not too high on him, but I probably would start him if Fournette was out.
Do you think any clarity was shed on who the top receiver in Jacksonville is going forward?
I mean, I still think it's Keenan Cole. I'm not really sure what his stat line was. Do you know what it was for the game?
I think he and Westbrook were pretty similar. I think they both had about 5 catches.
They're pretty similar.
1 second, I can pull that up right now.
Yeah, I actually like Westbrook better, but
I like Westbrook better too.
Yeah, but I think they
he's
have
more versatile.
I think they have Keenan Cole as their number one. That's why. But yeah, I like Westbrook better too.
Westbrook had 5 receptions for 51 yards. And I think we can agree that Dante Moncrief's the distant third here.
Yeah, he's not really factoring into it too much.
Keelan Cole had 3 receptions for 54 yards.
Okay,
so
around the
had
same.
catches. I think they had a similar target share, though. And, I mean, you can play either of them and feel okay about it. If Jacksonville's throwing, I feel like it's going to one of those 2 players. I just still don't think they have their passing identity. I don't think they know who the guy is going forward. Again, it could be both. It could end up being both. They both played well.
I don't think Blake Bortles is good enough.
I don't know if either of them will get enough volume on a weekly basis to be consistent.
Yeah, I don't think Blake Bortles is good enough to have two receivers contribute heavily. So hopefully you don't have to start either of those 2. But we'll see as the season goes on if either guy really emerges. Yeah, I'm just going to touch on something real quick. I think the Giants looked awesome though. I think even though I'm not big on Jacksonville, they still were in the AFC Championship last year. They were still a play from making the Super Bowl, so I'll give them credit where credit is due. I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender this year, but I still think they're a really good defense and a good team. But yeah, the Giants hung in there. I don't think, even if they didn't fumble that ball, 55 seconds, I don't think Eli Manning's marching down the field on that defense in that situation. I just don't think that's happening.
You never know, though. Odell drew 2 huge penalties on Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, they're always a little less likely to call those in the last 50
crunch time.
seconds.
That was fun to watch too, though.
Yeah, that was a good matchup. Odell balled out. But I think the pivotal point had to be the pick 6, or was it a fumble recovery all the way? That was it. You knew it had to come. They get one of those every game, so that was really the killer in that game.
Yeah. We'll move on. I don't think there's many takeaways from this game, so we'll go quick with this one. Buffalo at Baltimore. It was a blowout. Peterman looked terrible. Baltimore won 47-3.
Yeah.
The defense is still legit. Kenneth Dixon's probably missing a couple weeks with a knee injury. And if you're Buffalo, I know you were a playoff team last year, but you have to be alarmed.
Yeah, that Buffalo defense couldn't stop a nosebleed in that game. They were awful, dude. 40 points to Joe. I know Joe Flacco looks better this year, and he has more weapons, but you let up 40 points to him, and then they only put up 3 points. I have him as the worst team in the league. I had him as one of the worst before the season started, but I figured They were a playoff team. I don't know how, but they were. You got to give them some
Mhm.
respect. But after seeing
Because the Bengals bailed them out.
but after seeing that game, man, you got to be discouraged if you're a Bills fan. You got to
Actually,
start Josh Allen.
ironically, the Bengals bailed them out. I believe it was against Baltimore.
Yeah, it was actually.
I just want to ask you one question about them, and then we'll move on. John Brown had a touchdown. He seems to have a rapport with Joe Flacco, and he received a lot of hype in the preseason. Any chance you think he becomes a consistent fantasy starter and maybe ends up outperforming Crabtree on the season?
I think so. I know they both had touchdowns last on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
But he looked good in the preseason. This is John Brown I'm talking about. He looked good in the game. So you definitely have to see if this Ravens offense can keep up. You know what I mean? You have to see if it keeps producing or if this was a fluke against a really awful team. So you'll definitely have to monitor it. But I think he could be the guy. I think he's looked good so far. I always liked him with Arizona too. So
let's move on. And this next game, I just have two words. Tyreek Hill.
yeah, he's awesome.
Tyreek Hill
Yeah.
was phenomenal. I think it was a 91-yard punt return for a touchdown. He had an amazing catch in the first quarter, and he really looked like a league winner out there.
Yeah.
Kareem Hunt and Travis Kelce were sort of afterthoughts, but that's similar to Minnesota. I just think Kansas City's so deep that each one of their skill players will have a down week here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And Kansas City, Mahomes has a cannon and looked the part, looked like a franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
They beat the Chargers 38-28. Phillip Rivers threw for 424 yards. Austin Eckler got a lot of run, which was encouraging for their offense to see their backup running back catching passes and breaking off big runs. Are you worried at all if you're a Melvin Gordon owner?
I'm not. Melvin Gordon had like 30 fantasy points. He put up an awesome week. He's still the guy there. So I'm not concerned
They
about
also
that.
utilize both of them on the field at the same time. So I think it could complement instead of take away from Gordon's success and usage.
Definitely. Yeah, but man, Pat Mahomes looked like the man in that game. 4 touchdowns. He was gunslinging. Now, if I'm a Kareem Hunt owner, I might be a little nervous just because they put up 40 points. The Chiefs, you know the exact score? I think it was 38-40, something like that.
38-28.
When you put up 40 points as an offense and your running back gets 4 fantasy points, that's not a great reflection upon the game for him. So I might be a little worried that this will become more of a gunslinger offense, and that guys like Tyreek Hill and Watkins and Kelce will get all the hype and the points. So you'll definitely have to monitor that forward, how much the Chiefs' running game will do.
Yeah, I'd be concerned because they led this entire game.
Yeah.
So you think in the fourth, they just run the clock out and run the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And they really didn't hammer it home like that. And then also the other concern is, like you said, he threw 4 touchdowns and looked great. Kareem Hunt I don't think he had a single target.
Yeah.
And that was part of his usage last year. He was catching passes. He didn't see a single target, I don't think, last week. So a little alarming, but we'll see how next week shakes out. I think you still have to play him if you drafted him next week, but it is a tough match at Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Seattle played Denver. Denver won a close one, 27-24. Case Keenum had 329 yards, and Emmanuel Sanders went off 135 yards. Looked like Keenum's favorite target. He favored the slot when he played in Minnesota. That's really when Adam Thielen started breaking out. So I would say this is a sign of things to come going forward. I think the way the offense looks like it's going to run is they want to run the ball. Unfortunately for Royce Freeman owners, myself being one of them, it looks like they want to use a committee to do that. And they want a lot of throws to Sanders in the slot. I think he's going to ultimately have a better year than Demaryius Thomas.
Yeah, I'm the opposite of that actually.
Okay,
I think
let's hear it.
what I saw was Case Keenum throw 3 interceptions against a really bad Seattle team, a bad Seattle defense, a bunch of bums and Earl Thomas. Probably wearing
Okay.
that too. So I was not that encouraged by what I saw from Denver. I think certain players did look good, like Sanders and stuff. So that could be building blocks. But I was also surprised by what they did in the running game. I expected Royce Freeman to get 90% of the carries, 80%, whatever. But it was basically split even with what's his name, Lindsey.
Philip Lindsay, yeah.
Philip Lindsay, yeah. He's more the speed back, so they got a little thunder lightning there. So definitely an interesting thing to watch going forward.
I think I agree. It's something you have to monitor, but ultimately, and I think the same with Miami. I think the same with a lot of these committee backfields where you have the guys like Kenyon Drake or Royce Freeman, but then you have a good backup in Philip Lindsay or consistent backup in Frank Gore. I think ultimately, second half of the season, talent wins out.
Yeah.
And I do think Royce Freeman is the better running back. But I do think, at least for the first 6 weeks or so, they might utilize a hot hand approach, and you're not going to know when Philip Lindsay is going to be more targeted or more used. They'll probably give both backs a couple drives and go with a hot hand, which, like I said, I think it'll be Royce Freeman when all is said and done, but Philip Lindsay is worth at least stashing at this point, because if you wait this week and he does it again, you're not getting him next week.
Mm-hmm.
So, just worth mentioning for Seattle, Doug Baldwin is probably missing a couple weeks. He was banged up entering the season. He got re-injured. Brandon Marshall did have a touchdown, and I do want to mention Seattle is debating moving CJ Prosise to wide receiver. Something to keep an eye on. In college, he used to play receiver. But yeah, Seattle, I do not think they're a very good team. It was pretty much just Russell Wilson making magic happen and being Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Did you have any takeaways there? If Doug Baldwin does miss multiple weeks, is there a guy you want? Tyler Lockett? Do you think Marshall is the way to go?
Yeah, they actually both did good. Lockett had a long touchdown. Marshall had the one. I think he might have had another one that got called back or something. I don't know. I was only watching parts of that game. But in the red zone, with the loss of Jimmy Graham, Marshall might be the guy that they look to. So I think he could
he's
definitely
a
be
big
worth a
target,
roster
and he looked pretty good.
Yeah,
This
he did.
We'll move along a little quicker. We still have 5 games to get to. Washington at Arizona. This game wasn't very close. 24-6 Washington.
Yeah.
I feel like if you're Washington, you're encouraged. Your offensive line looked pretty good, and so did Adrian Peterson behind it. So I think, they need a tougher test than the Cardinals' defense. But I think you are encouraged based on your running game. Alex Smith threw for 255 yards. If you're Arizona, I think you're a little nervous. But, we all assumed entering the year their only relevant players would be Larry Fitzgerald and David Johnson. I think that's still the case. Did you have any big takeaways?
Yeah. The offense couldn't really get anything going. They fell behind early, so they didn't really run the ball that much. I think David Johnson only had 8 carries or 9 carries I saw before, which is amazing to me. I think he had 9 carries, and he had 5 catches or something too. So he was still made a focal point of the offense. I think he still had on that short thing, he still had like 14 points or something more if you're in PPR. So I was encouraged by that. I don't think he's really lost a step, but I don't know. I would just keep giving him the ball, and hopefully good things will happen.
We'll see what happens with both of these teams this week. They both have a tougher test. Washington has a tougher test in your Colts
Yeah.
at home. And then Arizona, they probably already chalked this in as a loss, versus the Rams on the road.
Yeah, that's not going to turn out well for them.
That's not going to turn out well. So, but yeah, Colts at Washington should be a good one next week, and we'll see what their offense is made of. I think the Colts defense isn't anything special, so I think they should have success running the ball again, but we'll see if they can win against Andrew Luck in what should be a much tougher matchup than last week was for Washington.
Yeah, I think that game will be a shootout. I could see a 35-30 game, 40-35, something like that. I don't think either
I just
defense is
want to say,
great.
Jordan Reed looked great.
Yeah,
he looked healthy.
that was awesome,
And he
that touchdown.
Yeah. So, all right, next was Dallas at Carolina. Carolina lost Greg Olsen to the same injury, the broken foot from last year. He hasn't been ruled out for the year, so we'll see what happens there. But I think Devin Funchess' fantasy value should go up. And this offense runs through Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
If you have him, he was the focal point last week. He'll be the focal point this week. He'll be the focal point of that offense going forward. So even though it was a somewhat pedestrian performance, I think going forward you are encouraged. As for Dallas, you are nervous.
Yeah.
Zeke couldn't get anything going till the fourth quarter, and there just seems to be nothing else in that offense.
Yeah. Carolina does have probably the best front seven in the league, maybe besides the Eagles. So I'll give them credit there.
Mm-hmm.
But 8 points in a football game, week one, a big game. That's not encouraging at all from Dallas. I think Zeke will be
Buffalo put 3, Arizona put up 6, Dallas put up 8. There were a couple very surprising. Atlanta only put up 12.
Yeah.
So there are some teams that really need to revisit what they're doing.
Yeah. So
I just want to mention Carolina did lose their right tackle, Darrell Williams. He's out for the year with a knee injury. So that is a bit of a blow. And Chicago Green Bay, the real GOAT, came to play. I did not mean for that to rhyme. I apologize. We just lost half of our 2 viewers to that. Yeah, I'll let you get started on this one. Green Bay won in a thrilling comeback.
Yeah. I'll touch on Rodgers after, but so I figured going into that game, Khalil Mack, probably the best defensive player in the league. New team. I think he had 1 or 2 practices before going to that. I figured he'd have a good game just because he's Khalil Mack. It's kind of hard for a defensive player to stand out. You know, kind of how it's hard for an offensive lineman to stand out. You be the best at what you do, and nothing shows up on the stat sheet. You know, you make the plays you're supposed to, and that's what you get paid for.
Russian quarterback.
Yeah, but man, oh man. You could never watch a down of football in your life, and you could already know that Khalil Mack was the best player in the league. He had a sack. He went up to
pick 6.
He went up to Deshaun. Yeah, pick 6. He went up to Deshaun Kaiser, said, "Give me that ball," and just grabbed it right out of his hand. And even on the plays where he didn't show up on the stat sheet, it was like he was unblocked. He would get right past the lineman. It was like he was going against I don't know, a piece of paper or something. So if you're a Bears fan, you got to be encouraged by that. Even though
I know
game.
They lost a heartbreaking loss there, but you lost to Aaron Rodgers on the road.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. If you're Chicago, you're encouraged. Trey Burton had 6 targets, only 1 reception. I feel like he and Trubisky were just out of sync, but that should correct itself. They signed him to a massive multi-year contract for a reason. And Jordan Howard looked great. He was catching passes, which he really had an emphasis on, in the offseason, working on that. If you're a Tariq Cohen owner, you're a little discouraged just because that was, Jordan Howard not catching passes was the reason why he had so much success last year. And if Howard's catching more passes like that, he's going to stay on the field longer. On the Green Bay side of the ball, Randall Cobb and Geronimo Allison looked like the second and third options in this Green Bay offense in catch-up mode, and Jimmy Graham really looked like an afterthought.
Yeah, he didn't do anything. I still think Devontae Adams is the one guy there, no question.
Mm-hmm.
You saw it on the one play, third down, he was running around, he just dumped it to Devontae Adams, and eventually your best players make plays. Devontae Adams made a guy miss, and he scored the touchdown. But yeah, I don't even remember hearing Jimmy Graham's name called during that game.
Randall Cobb had a big play for a touchdown as well.
Yeah, you did.
But I agree. I think it's Adams. Adams going forward. Adams all the way. I want to ask you about their running back situation, but I think nothing's settled. I think Aaron Jones is the best of their running backs, and from week 3 on, maybe week 4, once he gets into the game flow, I think he'll be the best running back in Green Bay. But did you have any takeaways between Montgomery or Williams?
I actually like Williams the best, I think, of the 3 in the backfield, but that doesn't say much. I don't really think any of them. If you have a quarterback
it's offense.
If you have a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, you don't need to waste time getting good run back blockers or good running backs. You're going to give it to him, and he's going to find his guys. So I don't think any of them will step up.
All right. Well, we'll see. I mean, we'll know more once Jones is back, but it is a pass-first offense. You have the best quarterback in the game. So, on to Monday night, Jets at Detroit. And if you didn't think the Tampa game was the most surprising result, then it had to be because you thought this was. The Jets forced 5 interceptions. They won on the road 48-17. Stafford left the game briefly. The Jets' defense looked legit. The Jets' offense looked legit. Crowell ran for over 100 yards. Quincy Enunwa seemed to be Sam Darnold's favorite target. A lot of short yardage and check down passes to Enunwa. And I don't know what to take away from this. I don't think it was the Jets are significantly better than we thought, but I think they are better than we thought. And I just think Detroit did not show up in this game. They couldn't run the ball. Stafford looked to be second-guessing some throws and just looked terrible and lost out there. Other than Kenny Golladay, who went for 114 yards, Detroit's offense really didn't show up. So I think it's hard to take much away from this, other than the fact that Detroit's worse than we thought a week ago, and the Jets are better than we thought a week ago.
Yeah. He threw 5 interceptions, Matt Stafford?
I think he threw 4 of them, but as a team, they threw 5.
Yikes. Yeah, I didn't even know that. I was never really too big on Matt Stafford, honestly. I think in his career against playoff teams, he has a record of like 6-38 or something like that. It's a bad stat. I saw it last year, I remember.
Mm-hmm.
But I was not expecting that. I thought the Jets would have a pretty decent chance at winning in a 1-score game. I didn't think it would be that. So
the Jets winning was the upset I think I predicted last week, which they did, but I don't think anyone expected it to go like that.
Yeah. I think Sam Darnold looked good. I don't think he looked amazing, as some people were saying, but I think he looked good. I forget what he had, maybe 200 yards and 2 touchdowns.
The game got out of hand quick, so it's hard to have a lot of takeaways.
And it was a lot of special teams plays and defensive plays, so it was kind of fluky stuff. But I think Robbie Anderson looked good. I think he had an awesome touchdown in the end zone. I went back and watched it in replay, actually. It was an awesome play. Right when it touched Robbie's hands, the defender came in and smacked it out, and he somehow held on. I don't know how he did it still. So I'd be encouraged if I had him on my team.
Mm-hmm. I do just want to mention real quick, if you are a Stafford owner, because I own him in 2 of my leagues. He's my backup in one of them, but I am a Stafford owner. I know you said you never really liked Stafford, but out of the last, I believe it was the last 7 years as Detroit's starting quarterback, fantasy-wise, he's been top 8, 6 of them. Mm-hmm. So he's been consistent, and there's a large sample size there, and he has all of the same weapons back from last year, except for Ebron, who really didn't do much in Detroit during his tenure there, and they added Kerryon Johnson. So I think Stafford, at least from a fantasy perspective, will be fine going forward. I think it was just a lost game. I think they probably stepped on the Jets a little much. Maybe not from an NFL perspective, but I think if you drafted Stafford, you didn't draft him as a backup. Probably you waited on quarterback, drafted him as a starter, and you should feel fine with that. Don't let this poor performance discourage you playing Matthew Stafford next week and beyond. I was going to say an easier matchup, but on paper they have a tougher matchup at San Fran next week. So we'll see if Matt Patricia could work out the kinks. Final game of week 1, Rams at Oakland, John Gruden's return, and Derek Carr looked terrible in the second half.
Yeah, Khalil Mack had more touchdowns this week than Derek Carr did. I think he threw 3 interceptions too, 1 pick 6. So if I'm a Raider fan, I'm not looking too happy. I mean, it was against maybe the best team in the league. So you shouldn't be surprised that you lost the game, but the offense just didn't look good. I think they got half their points on the first drive of the game.
I think because they played a better team. Let's be honest. They played a better team. I think in the first half, they looked formidable. They were running the ball effectively. The defense did their part. I think it was 10-10. I think they actually led 13-10 at one point, and then everything just capsized in the second half. They really need to get their receivers going. Their whole offense outside of the running game was Jared Cook.
Yeah.
Jared Cook had 180 yards, looked great, but Martavis Bryant only had 3 targets, one of which was severely underthrown. So he really only had 2 targets, and Jordy Nelson looked a step slow, in my opinion. Granted, they were playing Aqib Talib and I think Marcus Peters. Those are the 2 cornerbacks, I want to say, on the Rams.
Yeah.
So they had probably the toughest matchup they're going to see all year. But you need to use your receivers. It looked to me like game script, like the plan was to try to have success elsewhere. But once they fell behind, they abandoned the run, and they really couldn't get anything going. So I agree. I think you're a little nervous, but I think that was just game plan gone wrong. I do want to mention Oakland re-signed Martavis Bryant, which I think is more insurance than anything else. He may still miss a year due to suspension. I don't think it's panic on Amari Cooper's part or anything. I think it's mostly just insurance. But did you have a different opinion in that situation?
No, yeah, I agree with that. I think that's insurance too. I think he'll probably be the 3 guy besides the 2 previously mentioned. And yeah, we don't even know if he's going to play yet, so we'll have to monitor that.
So we'll see. For the Rams, though, Todd Gurley looked like Todd Gurley.
Yeah, no surprise.
All 3 of their top receivers performed well.
Yep, Cook's had a good game.
Did you? Because this is one of the more intriguing receiving corps because they have 3 capable receivers that no one knew who the top option would be going forward, and I feel like we still don't know that. I think Brandon Cooks looked the best out of the 3 of them.
Yeah.
But all 3 of them had value. Kupp had the touchdown. I know Robert Woods had some deep passes that they just couldn't connect on. I think all 3 of them have value going forward, and it might vary every week as to who has the best performance.
Yeah. So I think Cooks is probably the best too, but Kupp with that touchdown, he had 10 touchdowns last year. Cooper Kupp.
He had 10?
Yeah. Someone told me
that,
and I was like shocked by that.
Yeah.
So for some
couple,
reason,
I thought he had like 7, but
yeah. So for some reason he's the red zone guy.
Well, I saw them in their huddle. He is bigger than Brandon Cooks, and Robert Woods. He is their biggest target, and it could be part of that. Goff feels comfortable going to him in the red zone.
Yeah, and in an offense where you don't really have a standout tight end, that's what you want. So,
Yep.
so I would probably keep starting Cooper Kupp if you have him. Maybe play him in a flex spot or something like that.
As for next week, which games are you most excited, least excited about? Any upsets? I'll get started with. I'm excited to see Kansas City at Pittsburgh. I think Ben Roethlisberger at home in a better environment, better weather conditions will play much better. And Kansas City's offense was firing on all cylinders last week, so I am fired up about that game next week. I want to see if Kelsey and Hunt can, be more involved.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm intrigued there. I don't have Hunt in any leagues this year, but just as a player who won me a championship last year, I have a soft spot in my heart for him. And the other game would be probably Minnesota at Green Bay, divisional matchup.
Yeah.
How healthy is Rodgers? Will Kyle Rudolph be more involved? Minnesota's offense also looked great. Was Geronimo Allison last week just a product that they were in catch-up mode? There's intrigue in both games, and I also think there's shootout potential in both games.
Yeah, so I'm excited for those two games. Aside from the Colts game, the two games I'm probably most interested are Giants-Cowboys. I'm very interested in. I want to see if the G-Men can get their first win of the year and see how they do against a much worse defense than they played in the week prior. See how Saquon does, because it's hard to judge. Like him and Odell had very good games, and that was against arguably the best cornerback in the game and the best front seven in the game, or one of them. So it'll be interesting to see how they do against still a pretty good run defense, but nowhere near as good as Jacksonville. So I'm excited for that. Let's see, what else am I excited for?
Low-key, I'm kind of intrigued in tomorrow's matchup, Baltimore-Cincinnati. I think both these teams are a little better than we all expected them to be. And I think it could be an exciting Thursday night game.
Yeah, and then that'll be a good game. And the other game I'm excited for, I don't know if a year ago I don't know how I'd be saying this, but the Browns against the Saints. I think that could be. I don't even know what to expect honestly from that game. See how the Saints defense holds up. If the Browns just had a good 1 week, or I don't know. See which players stand out. But I can assure you that a couple players in that game are going to put up some high numbers in fantasy.
Mm-hmm. Do you predict any upsets this week? And you can include that game if you think Cleveland's going to win. It would still be an upset. The Saints are supposed to be the better team, and it's not supposed to be that close. But do you think that game or any other games this week there will be any upsets? I'm 1-for-1 right now with the Jets prediction last week, so I have a bold one I'm going with this week.
You go first because I got to look up what the games are.
All right, I think at home, I think Mariota's going to play, and I think Tennessee's going to beat Houston this week.
Really?
I know that's very, very bold. I think last week was. I don't think this Tennessee offense is great, but I think they got embarrassed last week, and I think a lot of that was due to the lapse in playing time. I think they're able to get the running game going a lot more effectively with Derrick Henry. And Deion Lewis looked pretty good last week, but I think it affected Henry more so. So I know they just lost Delaney Walker, but I think Tennessee comes out angry, aggressive, and with a point to prove. I think they plan to run the ball. They'll do so a little more effectively, manage the clock, and squeak out a close win. Hopkins is a little bit banged up. Fuller, we don't know if he's going to play. And you said it, Deshaun Watson didn't look great. So I think next week, if there is an upset, I'm going bold, and I'm going with Tennessee.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I don't really see any that would be considered an upset that stand out.
Mhm.
I think the Bears will beat the Seahawks, but I think the Bears are the better team, so I wouldn't call that an upset.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I think
That's a close one. I think that's a good game. Not an upset per se, but I think that should be a close game.
yeah, and then I guess the Colts would be the only upset I have. I think they're +6 in Vegas, and as I said before, I think it'll be a shootout that game.
Okay.
I think it'll come down. I don't think either defense is great. I think it'll come down to who can produce, and I'm taking Andrew Luck over Alex Smith any day. Taking Ty
Now,
over Jameson Crowder. I'm taking. So we'll see.
let me ask you, because we had a few very surprising major performances in Ryan Fitzpatrick, Jared Cook, just a lot of unexpected players going off last week. If you could take just a stab at just one lesser owned player, maybe someone still on the waiver wire, someone you think that is in line for a big, big game this week that people are probably sleeping on. Anyone come to mind?
A big game that people are sleeping on.
Just
Do you have-
someone who you think is either sitting on someone's bench that they're not thinking of playing, or potentially in free agency that might be able to just have a big, big game.
Yeah. I mean, he might be your starting tight end. He might not be, but as the game just mentioned, I think Jordan Reed could be in line for a big game this week. I think against my Colts D, we're not great at stopping at stopping offenses, and we're really not great at stopping tight ends. So I think Jordan Reed continues what he did last week. I think he could have an awesome week. So I would probably definitely play him.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna say, and I'll go with the Giants game since he went with the Colts game.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to say Sterling Shepard, because I know the offense predominantly went through Odell and Saquon, but Odell's going to face the toughest corner every week. And Dallas, their secondary just doesn't scare me. So I could see Shepard ending up with 5 catches, but maybe 70, 80 yards and a touchdown this week. So I could see a big game for him against Dallas, at Dallas, just because I think they're going to try to find a way to take Odell or Barkley out of it. So Eli might end up going to his second or third option, which is Ingram and Shepard. And I just think when all said and done, Shepard could be in line for a big game. And then also, if Deshaun Jackson doesn't play against Philly, there's a chance Godwin has a big game as well.
Yeah.
Just because he'll start, he'll get more looks, he'll run more routes. So I think he could be someone this week against a tough, stout Philly D. But I think Tampa's riding a crazy high from last week.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't think they're a great team
Yeah.
going forward.
Let me get
I
back to
think
that
he
game.
could week because they're going to have to throw to keep up with Philly.
So week 4, when Jameis is back from his suspension, do you think he's automatically the starter when he comes back, or what do you think goes on there?
I was going to ask you the same thing, actually. I guess since you beat me to it, I'll answer. I think, because they signed him to an extension, he's supposed to be their future. They want him to be their future. Sitting here right now, I think they immediately go back to Winston.
Okay.
However, that's circumstantial. If they beat the reigning Super Bowl champs this week, if they beat Philly, then I think it's impossible to ignore, and they have to revisit that.
Okay.
And even furthermore, I just looked it up. Week 3, they're the Monday night game at home against Pittsburgh. So it really depends what they do the next 2 weeks. The next 2 weeks are very tough matchups. But the Saints were supposed to be a very tough matchup, and they won.
Yeah.
So I think that depends on what they do the next couple weeks. Let's say Fitzpatrick splits, and he looks great in one game, subpar in the next. I still think if you end up starting 2-1 with a win against the Saints and then either Philly or Pittsburgh, you can't yank him.
Yeah.
And I think if you do yank him, there's going to be anarchy down in Tampa.
Yeah.
We'll see. You signed Winston. Ideally, you want him to be your future, but if you're having success, how could you pull him? That's my question. It depends what he does, but if he splits one of the next 2 games, he gets the win. How could you pull him?
Mm-hmm.
Do you differ on that?
No, yeah, I agree with you. I think again an awesome game, but I think you'll have to factor in the next 2 to determine that.
He has to continue it going forward now.
Yeah,
Worth mentioning, week 4, Winston's coming back.
yeah,
That's at Chicago, so not an easy matchup, but easier than the first 3. That's a grueling schedule for the first.
That's not a great schedule, honestly.
Yeah, so that's a little bit easier. Their week 4 matchup, which is potentially Winston's first week. If you were stashing Winston, let me ask you this: after seeing Fitzy go off like that, are you dropping him using the roster spot elsewhere?
Yeah, I'm not keeping him as a roster spot. I would rather go and take a flyer on Austin Eckler or someone like that, or Philip Lindsay. So I probably wouldn't keep him on my roster. Maybe in a dynasty league, but not in a normal league.
And let me ask you this, just because I don't think we talked about him during the Chargers game. Mike Williams had a big second half of the game.
Yeah.
They're down. He's their big target, but they went to him a lot in the second half. Do you think he's going to end up being Rivers' end zone target over Gates this year?
Yeah, I think so. I think that role would have went to Henry, but now that he's gone, I think Mike Williams will be the red zone guy. I think he's more talented than Gates at this point in their careers, definitely. But he's still the third best option on that team. You know, you still got to factor in Keenan Allen and Melvin Gordon. So I don't know how comfortable I'd be starting him. He did have 80 yards last week, and he looked awesome, but that was in garbage time. So I definitely need to see a little more out of him in that offense.
All right, let me get you out on this. Give me 2 players. No, give me 1 player you think is going to have a bounce back week, someone who underperformed this week, and then 1 player who you think is probably going to disappoint this week.
All right, I'm going to go bounce back player. I'm going to go Christian McCaffrey. I think he only had 8 points last week, and that against Dallas. He plays Atlanta this week, so it's another tougher defense. But they lost their 2 best defensive players, and I think, you know, with Greg Olsen gone, he's going to step up and be the focal point and show that he's there for a reason. He was drafted 8th overall, so I'll go with him. Player that I think will disappoint. Man, this is hard. Do you have any players that you think he'll disappoint or boom this week?
Yeah, so players who I think Tyrod Taylor is going to have a much bigger week this week.
Okay.
Again, with those poor weather conditions, there wasn't much he could do through the air offensively, and he didn't look great throwing the ball. But I think against the Saints in the Dome, conditions will obviously be better, and they just got torched by, in my opinion, a veteran but a lesser quarterback. So I think Tyrod Taylor is going to have a big game this week. Disappointing-wise, I think Miami, low-key, is decent at stopping the run. And I know Crowell just went for over 100 yards against Detroit. But I think he's going to get stuffed at the line a lot this week. I don't think the Jets are going to be able to run the ball effectively. It might be a bigger Bilal-Powell game, but if you have Crowell and you were encouraged week 1, I think again, this is just sort of a shot in the dark, but I think he would be my potential disappointment this week if I had to predict one.
Okay, a couple disappointments I found. I don't think Lamar Miller will do as good as he did last week. He had 100 yards, decent amount of fantasy points. I don't think he'll do that. And another player, I'm going to go with Mike Evans. He had an awesome game, but that was a product of that offense really booming. I don't know if he'll continue against Philadelphia and that team. So I don't expect Mike Evans to have that good of a game, honestly.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think this person's going to disappoint. I just think he's going to come back to earth a little bit. tomorrow, Joe Mixon against Baltimore. Baltimore is a much tougher defense than your Colts.
Yeah,
So
yeah, definitely.
if you saw Mixon 95 yards, touchdown, 5 catches, and thought that's going to be the norm every week, I think temper that a little this week. So I think fantasy owners will be disappointed, but they really shouldn't be. It's a tougher matchup. I would just, don't expect that every week. He's not facing the Colts every week, and Baltimore is a much, much tougher test there. So
Yeah.
we'll see. Big play. I do have one more. Because Greg Olson's out, and because Atlanta's defense just got crippled, I'm going to say Devin Funchess.
Devin Funchess, right? That's a good one.
So, I mean, Atlanta just suffered 2 serious, every down starters
Yeah.
just out for the year.
Mhm.
So, I think Carolina is going to look to who Cam's comfortable with. Obviously, they want the offense to run through McCaffrey. They're going to continue to do that. But one of his more tenured, probably his most tenured receiver on that team right now is Devin Funchess.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
do you have anything else?
Yeah, one last thing. This is more of a season-wide view. So of the second-year quarterbacks, who do you think? Not really Mitch Trubisky as much in this, but who do you think is going to have the better season, Watson or Mahomes? Did you see enough of Mahomes in 1 week to announce him king of that argument, or do you need to see more?
All right. So my take on that is by the end of the year, I think by the end of the year, they'll be playing well. I think both teams could potentially be in the playoff mix. Kansas City looks like they absolutely will be, but it's only been 1 week. I don't want to overreact. But I think Houston as well is talented on both ends of the ball and will be in the playoff mix. So I think by the end of the year, they'll be both playing well, but for the first 4, 5, 6 weeks, I would say Mahomes.
Yeah.
I think I'm a little nervous about Watson because of the injuries coming back, and Mahomes, I know you have DeAndre Hopkins, but Mahomes has weapons everywhere.
He has so much talent around him.
Everywhere. So I think if you have to choose one for the season, it's Patrick Mahomes. But by the time playoffs, or more relevant to us, by the time the fantasy playoffs roll around, I think you feel fine with either.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my analysis, and could be wrong. Deshaun Watson was the top quarterback or top 2 during the 7 weeks he played last week. He could revert back to that form sooner than I expect. I just think it will take a little bit of time.
All right.
Anyway, that is all for this week. If you have any lineup questions or injury questions, you know how to reach us. And good luck with week 2. Talk to you next week, cuz.
Later, bro.